There are things that only you can do because of how God has wired you and because of your giftings and your skills and your talents and the calling that God has placed upon your life. Now, one of my favorite books was written by Wayne Cordeiro. I probably have butchered his last name, but it's Leading on Empty. And I first read this book probably 5 or more years ago. And there's several things in the book that I really like and that have always stuck with me. One of these, I'm not sure I've ever shared it with you, is what he calls his 5% factor. And the point is this, that if you look at your life and how you spend your time, about 85% of what you do, really anybody could do. It could be checking email, it could be reading a magazine, watching Wheel of Fortune, attending a meeting. About 85% of what we do, really anybody could do. And then about 10% of what we do, someone else could do if they were trained. After all, if you really look at what you do, a lot of what you and I do, we were trained by somebody to do. And then there's 5%. So there's 85% of what I do, anybody could do. 10% of what I do, someone else could probably do if they were trained. And then there's the 5%. The 5% is the stuff that only you can do. There are things that only you can do because of how God has wired you and because of your giftings and your skills and your talents and the calling that God has placed upon your life. That 5% factor is hugely important, yet it is often overlooked. We spend a majority of our time on the 85%, and we often neglect that 5%. Here's the thing about the 85%. The 85% really has nothing to do with shaping your future, the destiny that you are forming, the legacy that you are going to leave. It is in that 5% that really that stuff happens. Your future is shaped. Your legacy is established. So here's my challenge for you today, and that is I want you to think about your 5%. If I ask you to list 5 or 10 things that only you can do because of how God has wired you and what's on your heart and the task that lays in front of you, could you make a list of what that 5% is? And then what you really ought to do is make that list, and then you should look at that list every day and devote a certain amount of time every day to that 5% because that's really where the magic happens. And then what do you do with the other 85%? Well, you do as much as you can, but you learn to delegate, you learn to work smart. We're never going to totally be able to avoid the 85%. Some of it you're going to turn into 10% because you can train someone else to do. You can delegate to someone else. They may not do it as good as you're doing it, but you're going to give it away anyway. The 5% factor, 5% of what you and I do, it is the most important part of our lives. And if we're not careful and if we're not really intentional about it, we'll overlook it. But I don't want you overlooking it. I want you to give it the attention that it truly deserves. And what you'll find that you're more fulfilled, you're less inclined to burning out and getting discouraged and losing heart. When you spend some time focusing on those important things that God has given you to do, and He wants you to do, and He wants you to focus on.